Welcome to the Successful Encore Career Podcast, brought to you by Nationwide Insurance, Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging, and InnoSource. This episode is being recorded at the Veterans Job and Resource Fair, hosted by Congressman Steve Stivers at Rev 1 Ventures in Columbus. I'm Brett Johnson, longtime volunteer with Employment for Seniors, and with me is Carol Ventresca, Executive Director with Employment for Seniors. Carol.
How are you, Brett?
Doing great.
Wonderful. We have this great program today. This was an opportunity we could not pass up. Congressman Stivers' staff called and said, we're doing this resource and job fair for veterans. Can you come? And we said, of course. And then, by the way, I'm going to bring all of my podcast equipment and Brett with me. So one of the things that we have talked about today with all of our guests is that it's sometimes difficult for veterans to know what resources are available to them. For the most part, people hear about health care benefits, but they don't necessarily hear about all the other programs and services that are available, not only through governmental offices, but also through other nonprofit organizations. So we wanted to take an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks today, and we have had some great conversations. Right now, we are talking to Danny Eakins, who is the Policy Administrator for the Ohio Department of Veteran Services. Danny, thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me,
We
Carol,
appreciate you coming to see us. This poor guy, he doesn't know what's going to come out of my mouth next, but we've got all kind of questions for him. So the things that we're trying to get across today, Danny, is that we want to know, what services are out there. So a couple of questions I'm going to ask you right away. Tell us a little bit about you, your military time, and thank you very much for serving our country. We appreciate it immensely. But also then a little bit about the agency and what you're doing there.
Sure. So yeah, Danny Eakins, I'm the policy administrator there at DVS, and I did about 10 years in the military. I enlisted in the Army in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. Went to officer candidate school, did 4 years active duty as a tank platoon leader, deployed to Iraq in 2005, and had an opportunity to see a good part of the country as part of that job. I returned in 2006 and actually did have a fairly complicated transition because there wasn't a lot of transition programming from the Army at the time, and was fortunate that due to my pre-military work that I had done, that I had opportunities to find work here in Central Ohio. Within a few years of coming back, again, because of those pre-military connections, I, for the first time, had the opportunity to work in the space of trying to help veterans. And that first opportunity was particularly in relation to higher education at our public colleges and universities here in Ohio, which then led to the opportunity to work at the Department of Veteran Services, where I've had innumerable opportunities to try to influence services for veterans in this state, particularly in employment, education, professional licensing, and also in areas like behavioral health and community coordination, which has been tremendously gratifying. So I'm very happy to sit and talk with yourselves here about what we're doing here in Ohio.
Well, as not only a graduate of Ohio State, but a retiree, I mentioned to you that I've actually worked with service individuals, servicemen and women, over a long period of time. And needless to say, way back when I started at Ohio State, the services were few, far between, and difficult to find and difficult to translate, and credit translation from military service to the university, and it was pretty wild. So we're very, very fortunate with the changes in Ohio law that has brought about some incredible programs for new veterans now.
Absolutely, and that's early on in my experience here, I had the real opportunity to influence that, and my first opportunity to work in the veteran space was at what's now called the Department of Higher Education, at the time the Board of Regents, when the governor at the time issued an executive order that made Ohio the first state in the country to provide in-state tuition to veterans and their dependents. And so early on, they asked me to come in to be the administrator, even though I didn't really have a higher ed background. But I had a strong sense of, one, Ohio is a place and a home for veterans. It's where I come from, and so it's a place that I wanted to help make better for other veterans to come here. But also that Ohio's got a great story to tell, and some great colleges and universities, some great communities, some great employers. And so it's a tremendous opportunity for folks to transition to a place where they can find a good job, they can get a good education, they can join great communities where they can, coach baseball teams and get involved in local, Habitat for Humanity or 4-H or whatever it might be. And so, we got some great work done with we eventually building on that initial executive order in the military. We always talk about improving one's battle position. And so we didn't just sit pat with that. We started to advocate for a more robust codified system in the law related to veteran services on our campuses, on an Ohio-specific military transfer assurance guide to ensure that there are more specific credit provided here in the state of Ohio for various military occupational specialties, and to ensure that that credit is provided, for instance, free of charge, that veterans and their dependents can receive priority service for things like class registration, and that all of our public colleges and universities have dedicated points of contact for those students so that while they're trying to negotiate family, they're trying to negotiate work and higher education, that they have someone they can go to navigate that university or college bureaucracy, whether it's admissions, registration, financial aid, and we've seen some tremendous success. Ohio State's a great example where the work that they've done there, and they've brought on Mike Carroll as their military services director, and where they've been named by College Factual now for a couple of years in a row, I think now as one of the best college in the country for military veterans. And so that's something to very much be proud of.
I think what the best lesson in all of this is that we're listening to the veterans about veterans' needs and making the changes based on reality as opposed to our guesses as to what the veterans needed.
And let me tell you, too, I'm sorry, Brett.
No, I agree totally, yes. Yeah.
That one of the neatest things about that process and implementation, too, was that one thing I did understand from our initial work at the Board of Regents and coming over to Veteran Services was how absolutely critical it was to get university faculty on board. And I didn't understand it at the time. I certainly understand the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into developing a course curriculum. And so helping them understand. And what was interesting about it, too, was when we invited the faculty to get involved, the universities started turning around and finding veterans in their faculty.
Oh, good point. Sure.
Who were more than willing to kind of step up and say, yeah, I'll help, push this. And so a lot of the transfer assurance guides that have been developed have all been developed within a college where faculty there did the work and then have now shared that. So one of the provisions of House Bill 48 was that once a piece of military credit is recognized at one of our public colleges and universities, it is universally recognized at all of our colleges and universities that offer the same course.
Right. Good plan.
And it transfers without any type of barrier or additional cost.
And this is at both community college and four-year campuses.
Correct.
Because there's so many opportunities at our community colleges, too, that to make it a quicker process for veterans, particularly as you said, they're trying to find housing, they've got kids, they want to get them into school and just get that credential, even if it's a short-term credential, and then look at a higher degree later. So good.
And my wife teaches at Wright State and totally get it. Totally get it. I mean, it's just a different atmosphere, a different neighbor, as it were, with Pat right there. But at the same time, you're ingrained in it very quickly.
Absolutely. Wright State actually has a history of being, I think, a former Ohio State branch campus.
Correct. Right at the very beginning.
To educate airmen. And their military veteran service center. So the other thing that popped up is once the colleges and universities were really on board with this, the law just required a point of contact. A lot of the universities began to really understand the opportunity to provide a high level of service and set themselves apart from all these colleges trying to recruit veterans. And in particular, the for-profit industry has been very effective at recruiting veterans using their GI Bill. And so having the state system really begin to learn how to create veterans lounges. And so the Veteran and Military Center at Wright State in particular is such a great, Wi-Fi, computer stations, charging stations, coffee, TVs, comfortable chairs, especially for veterans who may not have, they're a non-traditional student, right? So they may have families, they may not have some of the same, I mean, not everyone, right? So every veteran's an individual, but for those that may not have that opportunity to have like a, it's like the USO at the airport. They have a dedicated space where they can go and they can let their guard down a little bit and study and concentrate on the things they need to. And also opportunities for fellowship between veterans and faculty.
It goes back to that notion of the network.
Absolutely.
You were able to hold on to your network for the work that you did before you even went into the military. Thank goodness that network still existed and gave you the step you needed to keep moving, and now look at what you were able to do because of that. So one of the things that I had mentioned is that there are several organizations, nonprofit organizations in Central Ohio to help veterans. And I always tell everyone, we in Central Ohio are incredibly lucky to have very strong nonprofit organizations who help on employment services in particular. And it's amazing what's out there, but still that doesn't mean it's easy to find. I've had an opportunity to talk to the gentlemen who have created the Overwatch project, and just very, very impressed by the work they're doing and their mentoring program. You are a mentor for Overwatch, and unfortunately the guys, Eric and the guys, aren't here to talk to us, but would you mind telling us a little bit about Overwatch and what you're doing as a mentor?
Absolutely. So the Overwatch Partnership provides both mentoring and career development support to the veteran community, while also essentially leveraging that network of volunteers to also promote veteran hiring in the organizations and companies that they represent. So essentially, a mentor or a mentee who decides to avail themselves of the services, and again, it's not limited to any particular demographic of veteran. We get linked up, obviously, with a lot of veterans. We get a lot of referrals from, Columbus State University, Jay Favuzzi, and Mike Carroll at Ohio State University, but we have also had folks who are retired officers, field grade officers, majors, colonels, and above, get referred through into Overwatch. And they've developed a very robust network of mentors at all levels, from people that were privates or specialists or sergeants to people that were officers working in public industry, nonprofit, private employers. And what I really enjoy about Overwatch Partnership is not only have they recruited all these veterans to act as mentors, but they've recruited a lot of these talent development professionals, some of whom are veterans and some of whom are civilians, who either work for staffing companies or are people that work within HR shops at some of these employers. And so when you are a mentee and you sign up, you get assigned a professional development person who will help you with your resume, help you talk about coaching you for interviews, and really kind of get you introduced to how to translate those military skills onto your resume and what employers are looking for, because they have that experience in the companies that they work for. And then on the other side is the veteran mentor, who has a professional network that they can leverage. In my particular case, obviously, veterans who have an interest in public policy or government service, public service, they tend to refer to me. I also got referred a mentee because I had a limited military background in intelligence work, and so they had a veteran mentee that came to them with some intelligence background and who wanted to get connected. And what was beautiful about it was that because I got connected to Overwatch or became a volunteer mentor for them, in going to some of the networking events and getting to know some of the other mentors, and the work our department, quite frankly, is doing to try to help educate employers as far as preparing the ground of them understanding military culture, I had the opportunity to meet people in various companies here in Central Ohio that are involved in business analytics and business intelligence. And so there were some very direct skills opportunities there, and so was very quickly able to get my second mentee in particular connected to those people. So it wasn't so much that I opened the door, it was just I just happened to know people because of Overwatch Partnership that worked in that industry and were able to very quickly demonstrate to the mentee, you have a great background for this, we have opportunities, and we'd love to have you on board.
But that's exactly the additional services or help that a veteran or anyone needs in their road on looking for employment is all of those connectors, all those little bits and pieces of connectors. I think I mentioned to you that I had a gentleman that I met at a job fair who was not a client of employment for seniors because he wasn't 50 and he didn't live in our territory, but he was just having a really tough time in translating what he did as in military. And he was a career he had been in for 20 years and into his civilian life. And the disadvantage is, number one, I didn't know the language of military, so I kept asking him questions and he would get very frustrated because he didn't understand why I didn't understand. But also, he didn't believe me when I said, we need to talk about you, not your unit. The employer wants to know what you bring. What your unit brought to the military is kind of beside the point, and he was so offended. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's how it is. But I was able to connect with Eric at Overwatch, and he took him under his wing and really helped get the information across. And so it's familiarity, and it really is. I'm from a higher ed background, so I can talk higher ed, but I couldn't talk military.
And I'll tell you, one of the key things that we see developing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that one of our key partners for the Department of Veteran Services, and I would say for anybody doing work to try to help get veterans employed in the state of Ohio, is the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. Mm-hmm. And they have worked with Ohio Means Job to develop a veteran-specific piece of that portal called Ohio Means Veterans Jobs. And if you go to our website, ohiovets.gov, it's right there front and center to click on there. And from that site, you go to ohiomeansveteransjobs.com, and even right there, there's good information. They have developed a military skills translator, so that you can type in your occupational code, and it will bring up terms that essentially you can cut and paste and put into a resume, so that you're not speaking military jargon. You're speaking something that hopefully an HR person can better understand. We all know how algorithms work in HR offices as far as getting your resume through that first phase of review. And the other thing they do is they can help connect folks to, within the JFS offices, there are veteran-specific people, or everybody should be helping veterans for priority of service, but there are some folks that are specially trained to help provide services to veterans, particularly those who have some significant barriers to their employment, whether it be behavioral health issues, long-term unemployment, disabilities, whatever it might be. And so they do some great work, and that occupational specialty skills translator is incredible. That's also where they have two links to where we have some very robust information on Ohio's licensing and certification policies. So in 2013, Ohio passed legislation that I personally will tell you I think is the most advanced in the country, that required all of our licensing and certification authorities to review their policies related to pre-learning or prior learning, and determine where they could provide credit for military experience and training, and also do things like examine priority of service for veterans and dependents, give them authority to waive and discount fees if they would like, or if it was financially tenable. And we've seen some tremendous opportunities in coordination then between the higher ed system, like let's say with nursing in particular. I was just
going to say, if you could give us some examples, nursing.
The Board of Nursing, and I can tell you too, the Board of Nursing, I think they've provided services to well over 14,000 veterans and their dependents, whether it be priority renewal, educational considerations related to licensing and stuff. And then and again, a system that continues to improve. And especially in terms of being able to translate those skills, the other thing that we're seeing happen is that individual companies better understanding and getting more veterans into their workforce. So that's the other part, right? You get more veterans into your workforce. All of a sudden you get folks within your company that begin to understand what the employer is trying to do, and understand how the skills that the military that they were a part of begin to kind of come together.
Right.
And so you have companies that are starting to develop systems where within their company they're saying, they're training their own HR people, hey, if you did this in the military or you had this rank, it's the equivalent of this in our company. And as a department at Veteran Services, we've tried to help build on that by developing our veteran workforce team, where we have a team of 3 consultants, and where there are a lot of organizations trying to help the individual veteran. The purpose of that workforce team is to essentially prepare the ground at the employer. So we've developed 7 training modules that are accredited by the Society for Human Resource Management that provide training on a veteran and military culture overview, on working through behavioral health issues, of identifying military culture in terms of like what is your compensation package compared to what they were doing in the military at their pay grade. And help. The idea being is that hopefully by training those HR managers, we help make them more confident to engage groups like the Overwatch Partnership, like Jobs and Family Services in Ohio means Veterans Jobs, so that they don't feel uncomfortable, because of that civil-military divide we all talk about, that culturally we're just not speaking the same language. The objective of that workforce team that, again, Ryan is part of as well, is to ensure that we help close that gap. And the more veterans that end up working in these organizations and groups like the Overwatch Partnership that bring together veterans and civilians working in the hiring area, mentorship, and helping folks network, the more companies are beginning to understand those skills and those capabilities. And like I said, one of the first things we tell companies is to look in your own companies, find out who your vets are.
Right.
And you may find out that you have some tremendous advocates already.
Right.
Don't just send the recruiter to the job fair. Send the veteran who works for you, because in the military there's this culture of whether you enlist or whether you become an officer or commissioned, there's always a path. And there's always someone, you always get, at least in my experience, was I got assigned mentors throughout my career. And their job was to tell you, if you walk this path, this is what you will accomplish. And so that's something that a veteran is used to. And so being able to create those opportunities within a company, within an employer, within a community through things like Overwatch Partnership, it helps them find someone who can help show them the path.
Well, this is also really great information, really for a lot of different job seekers, because those are the kinds of things that we hope happen for our mature job seekers too.
Absolutely.
Whether they're a veteran or not. But that notion is to have them working with another individual, and for our older adults, working with a younger person is a great mentor-mentee kind of back and forth for them. The older adult is teaching the younger person information, and the younger person is teaching the older adult technology or whatever. So there's lots of give and take. So you're helping the veterans, but I think you're helping a lot of different groups, vulnerable groups, into the workforce.
When I think in particular with older veterans as well is how many have been displaced in given career fields, because of technological advances or what have you. A few years ago, in fact, when the federal government passed the VOW Act that was intended to help try to boost veteran employment, I think back in, I want to say that was like 2012, 2013. One of the features of it was it created a temporary 1-year program that provided an additional 12 months of GI Bill benefits to certain qualifying veterans over the age of 35 who had been recently displaced from due to whatever. And the idea was it was supposed to help them get connected to retraining that would allow them to get into the new jobs. And I do see this opportunity in some cases for these mentorship type programs like Overwatch to help maybe someone who hasn't had to look for a job because they've been working at the same place for 25 years.
Right.
And we think about how much that market has changed. Like they probably don't have a LinkedIn account, right?
No LinkedIn account,
Right.
No resume.
No resume.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many people come in and they're not 70, they may be 50, but they go, can't I just knock on somebody's door and ask for a job?
Right.
No, you can't do that anymore. So yeah, absolutely.
So there's certainly those opportunities, and I think that's an area too that I think as this grows, I think we'll see more and more of that. And,
Wonderful.
And in particular, the more veterans and the more, like, let's say if I was a civilian professional development person working with the Overwatch Partnership, and I get to know all these tremendous veterans who are volunteers in the Overwatch, and I get the opportunity to talk to all these tremendous candidates. Well, when the person who's now a line, professional development person, when they become a hiring manager, when they become a CEO, when they open their own business, 20, 25 years down the road from now, or even 15 years, or even these veterans who get help through the program, when they become in a position where they have a business or they're helping to hire, we hope they look back on this experience and better understand how to leverage and how to recruit and how to be relevant to that new veteran community at that time, or even to older veterans that are maybe they're getting displaced 25 years from now or 10 years from now.
Right.
And so this community that we're building will have that knowledge and experience that will help them make that transition hopefully a little more smoothly than it has been for people in the past.
Absolutely. So Danny, any words of wisdom that you want to tell veterans on, if they need help, where to go, contact information for your office and for Overwatch?
I can tell you that the best place to go for veteran services, I think, in the state of Ohio is you go to www.ohiovets.gov. That is a tremendous resource. It's our agency website, and the work that our communications team has put in to make that a viable outlet, not only in terms of getting access to your federal VA benefits, but also better understanding how to get connected to your county veteran service office. You can get connected to Ohio Means Veterans Jobs, to Ohio's higher education system, the points of contact at all the colleges and universities. We have a special page now for women veterans, over 67,000 in the state of Ohio, and we're working very hard to try to promote services and support for that community of veterans. And I think that's a tremendous resource for folks to go to. As far as Overwatch Partnership, overwatchpartnership.org. They're so easy to work with, to contact. On the overwatchpartnership.org homepage, they do have a like a kind of an email contact listserv type thing that you can get in touch with them. But they are very good at getting back to you, and I can tell you if you contact our department, we get back to folks very quickly.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you for all of the information today. It's just overwhelming, everything that's out there. I know I'm overwhelmed, and I think I always think I know all the resources, and of course I don't, but we really appreciate your time and efforts today, and also thank you for your service.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Brett. Really appreciate it.
Circle270Media.com.